What up, everybody? Welcome to The Sweat, powered by Fast Twitch Energy Drink. It is delicious. It is inside us. I am Emerson Latzia. It is exceptional. Yeah. Steve Buchanan, Julian Edlow. The air conditioning is broken in here, so...
literally sweating.
We will sweat today so you don't have to. A lot coming up in this show, everybody. We will wrap up our NFL division previews because the NFL season does kick off on Thursday. Something tells me you got a pretty good bet for it, Jules. At least we're hoping it's a good bet coming up.
It's the best bet.
We will also wrap up our NFC, the entire conference preview with Jeff Howe and Tom E. Curran. College football picks. Some reaction to yesterday, what went down. Wow, Colorado looks like the real deal.
A lot happened.
And then
we will touch on that.
The wild card race in the National League, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being wild. How wild is that going to be?
It is absolutely wild, and we will talk about that later.
Okay, put up your bukes, though, is where we are going to start. I love this segment because Steve dishes out his picks.
Really generous on the shape that Steve is in that graphic.
That was
uncanny, baby.
Right.
Okay, carbon copy. All right, here we go. So Steve dishes out some of his favorite picks right now on the DK Sportsbook. We're focusing just on the NFL. And then Jules is going to have to put up his bukes and fight Steve on it. All right? Your first selection this morning is what? You're going with America's team.
Right. So we are going to take an alternate win total for the Jaguars. We're going to go over 10.5 wins. So you're getting plus money on this one at plus 135. I think that there's a real possibility that they sweep all of their divisional games. When you look at the other teams they're going to have to face, Texans, the Colts, and the Titans. So we basically need 5 other wins in their remaining 11 games to go over this total. If you look at their schedule, there's a lot of winnable games on that schedule going against the Browns, the Panthers, the Buccaneers, the Falcons. So just like one of those games where, maybe they're not necessarily favored, which really isn't a lot this upcoming season as they are on DraftKings Sportsbook right now. But I think they can get over that alternate win total of 10.5. It's normally set at, I believe, 9.5 right now. But on DraftKings Sportsbook, you can take those alternate totals, bring it down, put it up. So give me over 10.5 wins for the Jaguars this year.
Oh, that is absolutely beautiful. And
I know you won't be putting up any bukes there.
No. I have accepted everything that you have just said, young Steven. Jules, would you like to put up your bukes, please?
I will absolutely put up my bukes here. Come on. Jacksonville caught lightning in a bottle down the stretch last year, and then lightning in a bottle again in that postseason game against the Chargers where things went completely awry.
At what point is it not lightning in a bottle?
That's what I'm saying, dude. They're just
You can't
good.
just keep using that.
This year, I'm not using that.
You've used it twice already. Go ahead.
All right. Well, that playoff game counts as the stretch run. So we're going into a new year. It's not going to be the same. You mentioned the easy schedule, yes. But division, we always talk about these teams that, the division stinks. They're going to go 6-0. They never do. They always want 4-2 maybe.
Okay,
they always wind up.
I was going to say 5-1. Worst case scenario.
We'll split the difference. 5-1. You know who else they have to play? Kansas City lost. So there's 2. At Buffalo lost. There's 3. At New Orleans, lost. There's 4.
No.
At Pittsburgh, lost. There's 5.
Wow.
49ers, lost.
Now you can't.
City
now
game
you're
at
at
10
home.
wins.
You don't think Jags can be Kansas City at home now? This Jags team, loaded offense, ascending quarterback.
Why would I think Jacksonville beats Kansas City? Kansas City's the best team in the NFL.
That's okay. The best team in the NFL loses sometimes.
They do. They're not going to lose this one.
You know what? It's back in Kansas City.
Excuse me for putting up my bukes. I just rattled off all the losses.
Back in Kansas City.
Oh, sorry. And the Bengals, which I know Steve loves.
That's a loss.
So now they're not. Now they're not. And the Ravens.
Okay.
They might have a losing record this season.
All right. Well, I'm glad you mentioned
8-9.
We will preview the AFC North coming up in this show.
Yeah, we will.
And next, Jimmy Garoppolo under 3,300.5 passing yards.
Yeah, so we've talked about this on the show prior already, and I don't think this is one that Julian is going to push back on too much here. But, I mean, if you look at what he did last year, through 11 games and 10 starts, he was averaging just 221.5 passing yards with a much better offensive line in front of him. He is not going to have that this year in Las Vegas. And when he's under pressure, he is absolutely dreadful. He completes 57% of his pass attempts, only 5 yards per attempt in that scenario. If you're getting pressure on Jimmy Garoppolo, that's how you screw up this whole offense, or you're going to be screwing up this whole offense for the Raiders. And I think teams are going to know that and try to get the pressure on him there. So I'm not even convinced that he ends the season as the starter. So if I have that in mind, then of course I'm taking the under on his passing yards. So give me that as a season-long prop that we can play this year.
Tough to push against this one a whole lot here, Jules, because health is the number one concern with this dude. I believe they've been managing his practice reps very closely in the preseason just because of, what is it, the foot or the ankle injury that he had?
I mean, he's been dinged up
everything
everywhere,
on his body.
So, I won't be putting up my bukes on this one, but I will I will play devil's advocate. This was a good conversation that we had on the Unreasonable Odds podcast this past week. Brendan Glasheen and I talked with Adam Levitan from Establish the Run. He came on. He shares all his projections with us when he comes on. And I spoke about the Jimmy G under, which obviously, generally, these things come down to health. It's a pretty low number. The 2 times he cashed the over, he played in all the games and cashed the over. Now, Levitan and his crew have Jimmy Garoppolo projected at 4,200 yards. But obviously, that is a 17-game projection. So if you project him for, what's that number there? 12 or less? Now you're looking at the under?
Yeah.
I project him for 12 or less, so I agree with Steve and would play the under. But to play devil's advocate, if Jimmy G does stay upright, the Raiders are going to be a bad team playing in a really good division, trailing in a lot of games, throwing it up to Davante Adams. The game script could be there on a weekly basis, if healthy, to clear this number easily in 17 games. That's the pushback. I just have no faith that Jimmy G can stay healthy.
And speaking of a number to clear, I have heard multiple people out there, Stephen, mention Zeke Elliott, newest member of the Patriots backfield, going over 4.5 rushing touchdowns. So even money here, plus 100. Why do you like that?
I mean, this is just such a low number to clear, especially for the role that he's likely going to be taking on with the Patriots. They didn't bring him on to be like that first or second down back and try to get those big chunk yard plays. They're bringing him on to be a force in the red zone because that is really the only area he's effective at this point of his career. I mean, when you look at what he did last year, he was only averaging 3.8 yards per carry. That was one of the lowest of his career, yet he still logged 12 touchdowns, which is tied for the second best of his career. He's never had less than 6 at any point in his career. In 2017, when he played only 10 games, he still had 7 touchdowns. Now, we're miles away, years away from where that was, to be fair. So, of course, I can't really take that into account. But, again, with the role that he's going to be playing for the Patriots, this number just feels really low. The Patriots had a lot of issues in the red zone last year. They scored the least amount of touchdowns in the red zone with only 19. I think that's going to change this year because Zeke Elliott's going to be in there. That's the only role he's going to have. So 4.5, truly, if we're at the midway point of the season, I wouldn't be surprised if he's already over this number already. So I think this one, at even money, no less, I think it's a really strong play.
Jules, put up your pukes, please.
I do lean over with Steve here. This is another one we talked about on Unreasonable Odds with Levitan. Go back and check it out. I think he had him projected for like 3.2, which would be an under. My pushback, and I agree with what Steve said, my pushback here would be that all those touchdowns came in a Dallas offense that was humming last year. This New England offense, even with the upgrade to Bill O'Brien, might not be the same. So this is a discussion we had on the Patriots segment when we were talking about the AFC East on the show yesterday morning. Steve gave this out as his best Patriots bet. My best Patriots bet, I went under 5.5 rushing touchdowns on Ramondre Stevenson. So that would be my pushback. I'll give what I think is a better bet, the under on Ramondre, given what this offense could be. Yeah, it works into Zeke being the goal line back, but Stevenson, first 2 years of his career, went 5-5 for rushing touchdowns, and now they're bringing in a guy to steal that goal line back work. He's a good pass catcher. He might get in a few times receiving the ball, but this under 5.5 is strictly rushing, and that's where I would go on this.
All right, Bukes, your next one here is a player who some believe can make that jump to elite status this season.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown to have the most regular season scrimmage yards specifically on the Lions.
Okay.
It's not in the league, just specifically on the Lions. You're getting that at plus money right now, plus 125. His 32% target per route run last year only trailed Tyreek Hill in the entire league. And you think about how much, Tyreek Hill is running and getting these targets per route run. Jamison Williams is out the first 6 weeks of the season. So now is this really going to be St. Brown's offense when it comes to receivers in this offense here? He won this bet last year. He edged out Jamal Williams by 22 yards. He's no longer on the team anymore. This is somebody who's now on the New Orleans Saints. That running back room for the Lions, a little bit crowded right now as well. Obviously, David Montgomery's in the mix. Gibbs is in the mix. So right now, this feels like St. Brown's prop to win at plus 125. He's going to be the alpha in that wide receiver group. Unless, barring an injury that comes through here, I think this offense is going to funnel through St. Brown. So getting plus 125 on this one, especially when you consider how much the running back reps are going to be split with the guys that are in that room right now, I think this is his to take.
All right, Jules, it's tough to find someone who could beat him in this department on Detroit's roster.
Yeah, what I'll say first of all is that I do like this market. Like when you're looking at season-long overs and stuff, or season-long player props, we generally, if you play an over on St. Brown's receiving yards and he misses 5 games or 4 games, you're not going to get there just based on the numbers. Even if he has a really good season, it could be close. But with this, now you're just going against guys within the roster. Like some of these other guys could miss a handful of games too, which makes it easier for Brown to get there, even if he misses some time. So I like the idea with the market. The only pushback I'll try and give is that we saw what Jamal Williams did within this offense last year. The rushing touchdowns were impressive, but just seeing the yardage, Jahmyr Gibbs is a guy the Lions were ready to take at 6 until they traded back, which sounds insane, but he could be a guy, if somebody breaks it, that's the guy I'd go with.
All right, gentlemen, appreciate it. And now, wild card bets. Who to back, who to fade coming up. But first, want to talk wild? How about what Colorado did in college football yesterday? Let's dive into it all next. All right, back here on The Sweat, powered by Fast Twitch Energy Drink. Some eye-popping results yesterday in college football, none other than what Colorado did. And because of this massive opening victory in the Deion Sanders era, look at the huge odds change here as Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, their Heisman odds jumping from plus 4,000 to from plus 10,000 to 4,000 rather.
You can
and plus
get it.
15,000. I know, a lot of numbers. My brain's not fully operational yet this morning. But it's clear the Buffaloes, Jules,
Yes.
are much, much better than many thought, right? But why should maybe we still be a little cautious when it comes to betting them? Or are you all in?
You can't be all in. Now, on the Heisman stuff and the national championship stuff, let's get rid of that. That's not happening because there's better teams, there's better players in college football. That said, those that were brave enough to back the over 3.5 wins on Colorado, those that were brave enough to take the plus 20.5, 21 on Colorado, those that were brave enough to take the plus 750 money line, congratulations to you, and I was blown away.
Yeah.
I understand the talent that Deion Sanders was bringing in. Travis Hunter was a #1 overall recruit that he got to decommit from Florida State to join him at Jackson State. But I would watch those celebration bowls with Jackson State. They were double-digit favorites back-to-back years in that championship game. They lost them. So, going into Colorado, going to Pac-12, going to the Power 5, playing against the runners-up from last year, even though they only brought back 10 starters, it was hard to imagine this. And then they got on the field, and the explosiveness from Henry, from Shedeur Sanders, Deion's son, from Edwards, the running back who broke 4 touchdowns, including the game winner. They were far more explosive than I imagined, put up 45 points. That is the story of week 1. The week 2 game against Nebraska, that look-ahead line was Colorado plus 7.5 at home. It's now back up on DK Sportsbook with Colorado as 2.5-point favorites. So the market this season, the outlook has completely changed. And after watching that game, totals, like overs in the Pac-12, I know USC, Washington, those are overs.
Yeah.
Overs with Colorado are going to be a thing. Blown away with Sanders, his accuracy, his poise, the quarterback that is his son, was amazing.
For sure. I mean, Buffaloes have a brutal Pac-12 schedule, too, with games against just Oregon and USC alone, final 2 weeks of September, and then Oregon State and Utah in November. By the way, Colorado must bet money line by handle on the
Unreal.
DK Sportsbook. It really, really was.
Congrats, bettors.
Okay, so what about Drake May here? Drake May was a little uneven, a couple touchdowns, couple interceptions. UNC gets the win. How much more does North Carolina need out of its potential #1 draft pick here?
Drake May was great, and the interceptions weren't even totally on him. They were kind of fluky. North Carolina looked awesome. South Carolina was a play for me.
I mean, they had some golden opportunities, South Carolina did. They just couldn't capitalize on them.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even – they played well, and Spencer Rattler can throw the ball. They had great receiver play, I thought, outside of a brutal 4th and 4 drop after they recovered the onside kick coming out of halftime. The skill position guys on defense – South Carolina held UNC under its team total, like it did its job. That was on the offense and not the skill position players. The major takeaway reaction from this is just how poor South Carolina's offensive line was. They could not, the run game was non-existent. They could not give Rattler any time to throw. I thought South Carolina was going to be a pretty good team that played a really hard schedule. They are going to be in some trouble because once you start playing these pass rushes in the SEC, they have a September game against Georgia. That front is not going to be kind. I think this SEC schedule is going to eat South Carolina alive unless they find a way to protect the quarterback. So it's a week 1 reaction piece. We don't want to overreact.
Yeah.
But if that offensive line doesn't improve drastically, South Carolina is in big trouble.
Now, let's continue overreacting.
Sure.
How good is this Washington blowout victory over Boise State going to look come playoff time?
Yeah, I gave out some team totals yesterday, split on them. I wish I gave out the Washington one. It was in the mid-30s, and they blew doors. Michael Penix Jr. looked like a Heisman caliber
5 touchdowns,
candidate.
450 yards.
I'm waiting for that Pac-12 game against USC.
It's going to be hot.
against Caleb Williams, that's going to be an amazing game. That's going to be I don't know what the total is going to be, but give me the over. Yeah, I think Washington's the real deal. They can score against anybody. If the defense is good enough to hold up, they're going to be a team. That's the first article I put out this year. Washington over 9 wins. Washington at 4-1 to win the Pac-12. Happy with the start.
You're pumping out articles left and right. We love
That's
that
what I do.
about
It's my job.
Yes, it is. And on the show yesterday, when you were doing your job, at least after the show, you were looking at a Baylor win total here. So moved down from 7 to from 7.5 to 7. So I don't know if that really was like a sign of things to come, even if you were planning on fading the Bears here, but I assume you didn't think that Texas State was going to pull off the upset. They were plus 1,700 underdogs.
I did not have this one. I have some Baylor under 7.5. I was looking at buying back on some over 7 just because I didn't have a great feel for the team. I let it stand, and I'm very happy with that decision. Baylor looks like they're in a world of trouble. Texas State is a team that can't play any defense, and Baylor at home in the opener just could not score. So it sets up a really interesting one next week where Utah, a team a lot of us were down on because of all the injuries, mopped Florida at home. Now they go to Baylor next week. Baylor's going to be looking for revenge after an embarrassing game. The line here was Baylor minus 1.5. I will be very curious to see where this one reopens. All the early money was on Utah. You've got to imagine Utah is going to reopen the favorite in that one. And then, are we talking Texas Tech? Are we doing that?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to hit on it like very quickly here. That was an ugly loss to Wyoming in double overtime.
Ugly loss on the road, but a look-ahead spot at home. Everyone's going to be looking at Oregon coming to Texas Tech. Oregon scored 80-plus points. They're going to go to Texas Tech. Embarrassing losses, double-digit favorites to Wyoming. Look at Texas Tech as the home dog there in a strong bounce-back spot coming up in week 2.
All right, we got a big game tonight, too, because it is Labor Day weekend, everybody.
That it is.
5th-ranked LSU, number 8 FSU in O-Town. That would be Orlando.
That's supposed to be a Florida thing.
And a prominent figure in this contest, showing up to the Gojo and Golick show to discuss this huge showdown.
One of the premier matchups of the early college football season, going up against LSU, a rematch of a game that you guys played last year, was one of the most exciting games of the season, and we got it so early on. What do you take away? Obviously, every team's different every year, but what do you take away from that matchup with LSU last year that you think helps, or especially for the guys that weren't around for that one, that you're trying to communicate about the team you're getting ready to face?
Yeah, I mean, they're a great football team on both sides of the ball and have a great coach. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to us. We always talk about focusing on ourselves. We believe that we are the only team that can beat ourselves. I mean, it comes down to little mental mistakes and stuff like that. So we're just trying to get all that corrected, man. Focusing on us and just be our best every single day. We're going to take it day by day. We got practice tomorrow night and meetings later in the day. So we're just going to focus on that right now. Just get as much knowledge as we can because knowledge is our greatest talent. So just trying to grow that every single day. The mental aspect of everything. I feel like practice is a lot harder than games because Coach Norvell pushes us so hard. And he curses us out a little bit, so we get uncomfortable. You have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. So, yeah, Coach Norvell does a great job. So, man, just focusing on ourselves, take it day by day, and when it gets here, get ready to roll.
All right, so what's the bet in this one here? Veteran quarterbacks returning, experienced offenses, transfer-infused defenses?
Both these teams are pretty similar, and there's a lot of hype around both coming in ranked in the top 10. Veteran teams, they bring their quarterbacks back, coaches that people believe in. This is a big game, a revenge spot for LSU off the 1-point loss in New Orleans last year. They missed an extra point to send the game to overtime
extra point, yep.
when they had all the momentum going. I'm going LSU this time around. They opened up underdogs. They've moved as high as 2.5 3-point favorites. It's down at 2 right now on DK Sportsbook. Now the FSU money is coming in, and I understand it. It's not a fade of FSU. I just think LSU is the better team here. I like the quarterback play. They have Neighbors at wide receiver. I think they're going to be able to run the ball, and they have a game wrecker in Harold Perkins that's going to get in there and cause all kind of issues on the defensive side of the ball. Revenge spot, LSU, they're going to get it done. I would play them on the money line.
What do you think for tomorrow night, Clemson-Duke? I know you like Clemson to win the ACC, but how much should we believe in Duke after that 9-win season?
Yeah, Duke has a lot of hype with the 9-win season. Difference this time around, they play a much more difficult schedule. I think Clemson's a team that I believe could even run the table and go 12-0 this year going into the ACC title game. So I'm not messing with the points in this one because they're on the road, but I think Clemson's going to come out and send a message that they are back this season.
Okay. Well, did you
Play them to win the ACC. Play them to make the college football playoff. I love all that.
All right. Well, that sounds good.
It does.
How about 546 push-ups by the Oregon Ducks mascot yesterday? Between that, because we have less than a minute to go in this segment. So they put up 81 points.
Yep.
Oregon did. Oklahoma scored 73 in a shootout. Notre Dame rolled. Caleb Williams, I think, had more touchdown passes than incompletion. So really quick, out of those teams, which one impressed you the most in their blowout win?
First of all, the Duck is going to be gassed for that trip to Texas Tech,
you
which
would
is
be
why I
dead.
do like.
You would be fried.
I can't do 10% of those push-ups. But out of those teams, USC, like they put up 56, then 66 to start the year. They're giving up 21 points per game to the likes of Nevada, San Jose State. They can't play any defense. USC overs are going to be a thing again for sure.
All right, coming up on this show, we call the Sweat, powered by Fast Twitch Energy Drink, everybody. We're going to dive into that wild NL wildcard race. But first, who our analysts are backing in the Aaron Rodgers list, NFC North now, and their level of confidence, I don't know, in the kneecap-biting Lions. All right, well, back here on DraftKings Network as well as VSiN and all of our DK social channels, it is the Sweats powered by Fast Twitch Energy Drink. These two dudes are fired up. They are fueled up with Fast Twitch Energy. We got Pierce Dietrich, we got Jeff Ulrich, a couple of my favorite DraftKings contributors. And it's nice, gentlemen, that we're bringing you on here for an NFC North preview, because anyone new to the program, just want to give you a heads up. This is Pierce Dietrich's division. Years ago, when the Lions were 2-14, this guy is saying, well, the Lions are basically an 8-8, basically a 500 football team. So I'm excited to get into this with you. Right now, Pierce, though, when we start at the top, you look at the Vikings, they cruised through the division last year. We know how everybody feels about Kirk Cousins under center. Can't perform when the lights are their brightest. Are they being a little disrespected here at plus 290 to win the division?
No, they're not. And they didn't necessarily cruise last year. Yes, they won games, but they won a lot of games by the skin of their teeth. Their games could have easily gone the other direction, and they could have had a horrible season with you. They could have had a really great offense with great statistics and just a bunch of L's, but they ended up winning most of those games. I could easily see a reversal of fortune this year and them going in the other direction, so I wouldn't be really very bullish on them to repeat. The defense is still a problem. Of course, the offense is very good. This team is kind of flipped. Under Mike Zimmer for years, had good defense, kind of struggled on offense. That switched last season. The offense came to life, and the defense was dead. I'm a big proponent of having a defense to win games and to win championships and to rely on. I just don't think it's going to continue to work out and go in their favor this season.
All right, Jeff, last year's 13-win Vikings team, was it more of a mirage considering the negative point differential?
It is a huge mirage. And, you know, the thing about the Vikings, too, that kind of bothers me going into this year, it almost seems like nobody in the building wants to acknowledge the problems. I mean, did they really change the culture of their team that much? No. They went offense in the first round. Pierce just mentioned all the defensive problems they had. And, you know, like they didn't really address the running back situation. They're just like, oh, yeah, Dalvin Cook, you can go. It's okay. We'll be fine. They didn't sign anyone of note. They took up Myles Gaskin off of waivers. But, I mean, this is a team that, to me, like, they look less deep than they were last year, and that's really problematic when you consider the fact that this team could have so easily been 8-9 last season, despite, you know, like what actually happened. There's so much luck at the end of games. So I just don't see the Vikings being really much different. I actually think they might be worse. And I think when you look at the division, you know, you're going to have at least one of the bottom two teams, and like the Packers and the Bears, I think at least one of them, potentially both, being better than they were last year. So it's problematic for the Vikings. No, I don't think their odds are too low. I think, if anything, they're too high.
Pierce, it's time to talk Lions, baby. How much are you buying into this team being the favorite now in the division?
Yeah, I don't like the Lions being the favorite. It's a strange world to live in. I like it when the Lions are the underdog. Unfortunately, when you start counting on the Lions to win games, the Lions do Lions type of things. But the culture's changed a lot under Coach Dan Campbell, and I've been preaching about that for the last couple seasons. This is a very much more disciplined team, a much better coached team. Offensive coordinator Ben Johnson has absolutely changed things around. They've got good receivers. They've got solid running backs, and it really all starts with the offensive line. So as long as that offensive line continues to protect Jared Goff, that's really just all you have to do. He's an above-average quarterback. He's not great, but if you block for him and he has receivers and a good play caller, he looks like a superstar. The offense isn't the problem. The defense, just like the Vikings, is the issue. But it looks like the Lions have done more to address their defense. They've completely rearranged their secondary. They have high hopes that that unit's going to change around a lot. And the front seven wasn't bad. They're just young. And so each year they're going to progress and get better. So if any defense is going to come alive, I would say it's going to be the Lions. So unfortunately, they're the favorite. And we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, Jeff Ulrich. So they go from 3 wins to 9 from 2021 to 2022. What can this group do this season?
Yeah, you know, I mean, look, Pierce and I are definitely on the same page today. I know there was a few hiccups on the show yesterday with our takes, but like today, I agree 100%. I don't really like the Lions as favorites. It's scary. This is Detroit, the Detroit Lions we're talking about. You don't want to bet them as favorites. Scrappy underdogs, yes, but I'm a little bit worried that perhaps Detroit is getting out in front of themselves, or just that the national media and everyone is getting out in front of themselves. They got a really tough test to start the year. I do think they'll be fine, though. And I think part of the reason they'll be fine is just the division that they're in. I think that ultimately, when you look at the people going to be chasing them, there's going to be enough hiccups on those teams that Detroit will probably have time to get it together, even if they do start slow or something like that. And I think offensively, this was a top 5 offense last year. My big concern would be if Amon-Ra St. Brown goes down. He did have a bit of an injury towards the end of preseason. It's a little worrisome. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, a guy I would be targeting personally on the overs, receptions, potentially even looking to make a bet. Most receptions in the league at plus 1,000. You just look at this receiver core. This is basically Cooper Kupp NFC North style, in my opinion. They're going to treat him in that regard. All kinds of routes. They want to expand his route tree this year. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, to me, a very pivotal piece. And if Detroit does pull this off, hits the division win at plus 140, I think he's just going to have a massive year.
Yeah, Steve Buchanan mentioned earlier on this show, Jeff really likes Amon-Ra St. Brown to lead the team in yards from scrimmage. You can still get plus money on that right now in the DraftKings Sportsbook. Packers here, Jeff, were favorites year after year after year, but it will be a much tighter race now this fall with a new QB1 with Jordan Love. So his time to shine, or do you expect him more to easily stumble?
I mean, I think it's going to be somewhere in between. I just think that Jordan Love's going to have a very uneven season. Just from what I'm guessing, just from based on preseason, missing a couple extremely easy throws, but then making some extremely tough plays as well. I think that's Jordan Love in a nutshell. He had 17 interceptions his last season of college. That's a lot. I may have even led the college ranks in that regard. So 17 interceptions. Jordan Love would actually be a player I'd be looking to play the over on an interception props. He's got a 12.5 over under there. You can actually get him to lead the league in interceptions in plus 1,300. Jordan Love's probably going to play every game this season unless he gets injured, because the Packers need to evaluate this guy, and the Packers really have no backup plan, although they did draft a nice rookie QB. But this is a very young Packers team. I would not necessarily be leaning towards them as the sort of underdog who might make a run, but there's a lot of talent there, and they still have a good head coach. So I'm not completely out on the Packers, but they would be a team I would probably be looking to fade. The under at 7.5 wins is still a plus 100, might be something, but I like attack Jordan Love props, like I said, especially in the interception market.
Pierce, how uneven of a season do you expect from Jordan Love?
I wanted to come on here and just bash Jordan Love and the Packers and talk about how poor they're going to play, and that is the easy route. But let me just try to change my own mind and think this through. How could it be a situation where the Packers actually win? And so the first thing that pops to my mind is yesterday we were bullish on these rookie quarterbacks. We think that they can all perform. Well, why can't Love perform? And he's had more experience. He's been in the NFL for a couple of seasons. If those guys can do well, then why can't Jordan Love, in a system that's pretty much established, in a franchise that's pretty well run? He's got decent running backs. The lines are getting a little older. It's okay. But ultimately, we've talked about the Vikings and the lines can't be trusted. I know we can't trust the Bears, so why can't we completely, think about possibly the Packers sneaking away with this division? I think a lot of it comes down to the receivers, and our general consensus is the receiving core is bad. But maybe some of that was Aaron Rodgers. Maybe some of that was Aaron Rodgers holding grudges and just refusing to pass the ball to some guys because he didn't like them and feeding passes to Cobb over and over and over. So maybe the receiving core is talented, and Love might actually make a splash.
Pierce, what is enticing for you on the DK Sportsbook when you're looking at the Chicago Bears here? You believer in Justin Fields in this group?
I'm definitely a believer when we're talking about daily fantasy. Maybe not Fields in terms of the sports book, just because of his likelihood to get injured. And even if he doesn't miss a lot of games, there's a very high chance he's going to miss some games. And if you're going to bet totals on him, you're more than likely going to be probably in the safer spot taking the under. I really like taking the Bears to win the division. As we've mentioned, all these teams have question marks all over them. It could go in any direction. And any team that's made the most offseason moves have been the Bears. The Bears have improved their offense. They've improved their defense. I think ultimately it just comes down to their offensive line play, which they block well in terms of running game, but pass protection was awful, and you can't allow that unless you want your star quarterback to get injured. So, and then preseason's not going so well. They've got injuries. The coaching staff has described the offensive line as fluid. That's never a good thing about a week before the season. So, maybe the line gets healthy, they start to gel, but that's what it's all going to come down to.
All right, Jeff, less than a minute to go in this segment here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm the most bullish on the Bears, but again, like it's hard to be super bullish here either. I mean, there are some injuries coming in. How is Justin Fields going to perform? He certainly didn't look like he took a step up as a passer in the preseason. Now, having DJ Moore as just a massive yards after the catch king is going to be huge. And I think like when you add in the additions they made, the improved defensive line with DJ Moore, I think taking the Bears at plus 380 to win the division is actually pretty reasonable for the simple fact that there's just so many question marks in this division as we've gone through teams and as we've shown. So I do like the Bears. I think I'd probably rather play them to make the playoffs or win the division than just take the outright on the over their number.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. We got Jeff Howell, The Athletic, Tom E. Curran coming up in this show. We're going to be out at Gillette Stadium previewing the entire NFC as a whole. But coming up after this break, the Phillies, the Cubs, Giants, Diamondbacks, Reds, Marlins. Who is Steve Buchanan backing in the NL wildcard battle? We will discuss that next. All right, back here on The Sweat, powered by Fast Twitch Energy Drink. I didn't need to show you that because it is everywhere in our studio. Steve Buchanan back in our studio talking baseball. Yesterday we saw, you helped us out, who has the advantage in that AL West race to the postseason. Right now, NL wildcard race is the most wild wildcard race we are seeing in the current wildcard race in Major League Baseball, right?
Well, there's only 2 of them, but yeah.
Yeah, that is very true.
Right.
The Phillies building a lead for the wild card spot, the top one. But the Cubs, the Giants, the Diamondbacks, the Reds, the Marlins. This is fun. This is what the hunt for October is all about. And look, Chicago leading by 2 spots, leading the second spot rather by 2 games here. So to grab a wild card spot, minus 255 in the DraftKings Sportsbook, how much do you like them to actually make it in there?
I don't. I think they're going to actually end up missing out on the playoffs here. If you look at the graphic we have over there, I mean, of the 26 games they have remaining, 17 games of those are against teams in a playoff hunt. They only have 9 games left against teams under 500, where you have some of the other teams that are in the mix right now, like the Reds and the Giants. They have some of the easiest schedules remaining for the month of September. I mean, the Giants have 7 games left against the Colorado Rockies. Arizona has games against the Rockies and the Chicago White Sox. Like, there's a lot of paths for some of these other teams to make it into the playoffs, where the Cubs are really going to have to, like, scratch and fight their way to get one of those final wild card spots. And really, this is what it's all about here. This is why they implemented this extra wild card spot, because there are so many teams that were like fringe teams in the last few years. Now they're actually vying for a legit playoff spot. But I think when all is said and done, I think the Cubs, unfortunately, are going to miss the playoffs here this year.
They still got a series with the Braves, 7 games against the D-backs. So the Giants here have 3 coming up against the Cubs, 7 with the Dodgers. We know the situation the Dodgers are in. Possibly could be resting guys a little bit towards the end. So what's your level of confidence in the Giants gaining some ground?
So I do have more confidence in the Giants, and the big reason for me is that this team is anchored by their pitching staff. This is why they've gotten as far as they had. It's not because of their offense by any means. If you look at their offensive stats for like the entire year, they're ranked in the bottom half in runs scored. They don't hit for much power at all. But the best thing that they have going for them is that their pitching staff and their bullpen is what gets them through these games. So I think the Giants, pitching really wins these playoff games. And I think going down the stretch here, a little bit of an easier schedule for the Giants, I think their pitching will overpower some of these weaker teams, and that will be able to get them into the playoffs. It's going to be very, very close. Yeah. I don't think any of these teams are going to start running away with a wild card spot that are either in the playoffs right now or, a couple games out. Yeah. But I think the Giants are going to be able to get into there because of how good their pitching is.
And the odds on the DraftKings Sportsbook for a lot of these teams we're discussing are very similar in terms of making the playoffs or missing the playoffs, because the race is like so tight right now. Right. And when we talk Diamondbacks, they have 26 games remaining as well. Orioles, Astros, and Cubs, but the Rockies and Padres also fill up their September games. So 498 winning percentage, 486 winning percentage for the remaining schedule now. Tough games, possible layups. Plus money to make the playoffs, though. What do you think?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite bets right now that you can take for a team to make the playoffs. I do think Arizona is going to be one of those teams that does make it. They have 26 games remaining. 13 of them are against teams that have nothing to play for. The Rockies, the White Sox, the Mets, and the Yankees. The Yankees in particular, looking to see what they have in their top prospects. They called up 2 of them for the September calls-up with Austin Wells and Jason Dominguez, who's already made some noise thus far. But the Yankees are just basically seeing what they have left. Arizona feels like the most complete team of all the teams that are on that fringe playoff spot. They anchored the back of their bullpen by getting Paul Sewald from the Mariners. That really filled up their closer role, really kind of completed their bullpen. They have a very good offense. The rotation is the only thing I have a little bit of a question of, because guys like Zach Davies, still in that rotation, would never start a playoff game if the Arizona Diamondbacks did make it. But I think the Diamondbacks, overall, of the teams that are vying for a playoff spot right now, they feel like the most complete team. And like I mentioned, 13 games left of their 26 against teams with nothing to play for, where Arizona is trying to make the playoffs. I think that's a huge advantage for them.
All right, so you've already mentioned like the Giants pitching, right? And how they really rely on that and lean on that. That's something the Reds really can't do. Right?
Do not have.
But they swing good wood here, man. Right. This is a team that lost, 100 games last year? Now they're in the midst of a crucial 10-game homestand that could paint the picture here as we march towards October. What do we think about the Reds' current situation, and how bad do we need Ellie De La Cruz playing October baseball?
I mean, to be fair, Ellie De La Cruz has fallen off dramatically since he's come up. Like, his numbers overall aren't that good. Like, I don't think he's actually major league ready at this point. He's a phenomenal player and a phenomenal talent, but I don't think he's ready for the majors right now. Nonetheless, he still makes the Reds a better team. The advantage for the Reds, too, is they gained a game on everyone last night. Everybody currently sitting in a wild card spot lost last night, so now the Reds were able to gain a game on all of them. But like you mentioned, pitching is going to be their biggest detriment. They do not have a pitching staff at all. Aside from Andrew Abbott, that team is really, really struggling to find somebody who can be a reliable starter for them if they make it into the playoffs. And they're the only team right now in a playoff spot or within a playoff spot that has a negative run differential. I mean, it's been really bad for the Reds, but they have an incredible offense, and that's what might keep them above water at this point here. So I think that they might be able to make it in there. It's going to be close there, but even if they do make it into the playoffs, I don't expect a deep run by them at all because pitching is going to be a killer for them. They literally have to put up 6, 7, 8 runs per game to really have a chance at winning because their pitching has just been that bad all throughout the year.
All right, well, let's not sleep on the Marlins, who are keeping
We
pace.
can sleep on them.
Okay, all right, because right now, 3-game winning streak kind of has them back in this playoff picture.
Yeah.
They're 1 game out of the wild card in the National League. Are you counting them out? It sounds like yes,
Yeah.
which is +3. Well, yes to make the playoffs, +300. No, -390.
Yeah, I mean, I think that really says it all right there. I mean, it's been a great story for the Marlins. Nobody expected them to be this good of a team, especially this late into the year. But this is another team that has a negative run differential that's within a playoff spot. If you look at their expected win-loss record, which basically takes their their run differential and puts a record to it, it's a 6-game swing because they have a -46 run differential. And then they went out, they made a big deadline move for David Robertson to be their closer. That didn't even last too long because he has been absolutely atrocious since he put on a Marlins uniform. 12 innings pitched, 7.50 ERA, 5.26 FIP. He's already out of their closer's role. So it's a good team. It is not a great team. There are great teams above them. So with this struggle that they've been going through, yes, they're on a little bit of a winning streak here, but if you look at some of the schedules for some of these other teams, like the Giants, like the Diamondbacks, like the Reds, they have a much easier path to the playoffs than the Marlins do. I don't think the Marlins are ready yet, but in a couple of years, I think they're going to be an actual legit team.
All right, well, tonight they're in our nation's capital. And speaking of tonight's slate, you got a good DFS hitter for the folks at home?
Yeah, let's go with Tristan Casas going up against Taylor Clark
Ooh,
there
I like
from
this.
the Royals here. Clark against lefties is a 4.03 WOBA on the year. Casas has been hitting the ball extremely well as of late. Overall against righties, 372 WOBA, 132 WRC plus against righties. And like I mentioned, he's been hitting the ball extremely well as of late, averaging 10.2 DraftKings fantasy points over his last 10 games, 2 home runs, 3 doubles over that span. He's been getting hot for the Red Sox right now, who really technically aren't out of it right now, but everybody in Boston would agree that they're out of it. I mean, any other team that's 5.5 games out of a wild card spot, you're very much in it, but at least the consensus here is in Boston is that this team is so out of it right now, but at least from a daily fantasy standpoint, I think Casas is a good play tonight.
All right, give me someone on the bump. Who do you have as your best DFS pitcher tonight?
I like John Gray going up against the Twins, and this is for this afternoon, by the way. But a lot of strikeout upside for John Gray going up against this Twins team. If you look at their projected lineup for this afternoon, they own a combined 28.7% K rate against righties. 4 players on that projected lineup have a K rate of over 31% or higher. John Gray's had a pretty tough stretch. He's been going up against some pretty tough teams. The box score has looked really ugly, but if you're looking for some strikeout upside on this slate this afternoon, John Gray probably has the best upside, the best ceiling amongst all the pitchers going here tonight against the Twins team, who is very generous when it comes to strikeouts. So even though has been pitching well lately, I think John Gray has a nice bounce back here this afternoon.
Let's frolic on over to the DraftKings Sportsbook,
Sure.
your player prop du jour.
Yeah, so one of my favorite categories you can get on DraftKings Sportsbook is the hits, runs, RBI category. So
You love
any
that one.
combination of that a player goes over or under, you can bet on. So Julio Rodriguez to go over 2.5 hits, runs, and RBI, getting that at -110. I mean, this is somebody who has been like on a different planet when it comes to hitting at the plate lately. Over his last 10 games, 4 home runs, 3 doubles, a triple, 10 RBI over that span. Over his last 10 games, he's gone over 2.5 hits, run, RBIs 9 of those last 10 games, going up against Tyler McGill of the Mets, who has been struggling more on the road than he has at home. But Rodriguez is just hitting anything and anything that's been heading his way, especially against right-handed bats. So I think this is a really excellent spot to back Julio Rodriguez once again, -110 on that hits run RBI 2.5, which is usually usually not a number you see. It's usually at 1.5, but just with how good Julio has been, 2.5, that's the number for him today.
All right, favorite bet overall right now, quickly.
Overall, I'm going to go with the over on the Yankees and Astros over 8.5 runs. I think there's going to be a lot of offense in this one here. The Yankees have been hitting extremely well as of late. I think that game goes over.
All right, stay right where you are because we're going to be pool hopping on the Sweat, powered by Fast Twitch Energy Drink when we come back after this break. Welcome back to The Sweat, everybody, powered by Fast Twitch Energy Drink. I'm Emerson Lozcia, sitting alongside Steve Buchanan, DraftKings contributor. Also, Julian Edlow, another DraftKings contributor. We are bringing you the show now on DraftKings Network, on VSiN, all the DK social channels every Saturday and Sunday morning for 2 full fat hours from 8 o'clock Eastern Time to 10 o'clock Eastern Time. What have we done so far in the show? We have tackled almost anything and everything you could think of. Baseball, NFL division previews, which we will wrap up coming up later in this program. Right now, we're going to go pool hopping because it's hot in the studio.
Very.
And it's disgustingly hot in this studio. But tons of pools on the DraftKings Sportsbook, right? And in terms of like pick'em pool here, guys, 5 season-long pick'em pools with fees ranging from $5 to $50,000. You make 5 picks against the spread, taking week 1 off, so you make 80 total picks during the season. We'll talk about all of our week 1 NFL selections and picks next week. But Jules, what's one sneaky spread bet that you might be targeting to give you a leg up early on in this pick'em pool?
Yeah, I'm not saying this is a best bet for me or a bet that I'll wind up on in week 1 or not, but we use the term sneaky there. You want to use spreads that are kind of, think of these as like a DFS contest almost. Low ownership on your pick, if it cashes, is a good thing. And I think the sneakiest spread on the board, as I look at our DraftKings Sportsbook betting splits available on the VSiN website, the Eagles opened, 5.5? We all thought they'd get bet up closer to 7 against a Patriots team whose win total has been bet down to 6.5. They have 84% of the bets for 85% of the handle on DraftKings Sportsbook. This spread has come crashing down to New England plus only 3.5 at home. A very short home dog in week 1 when all the money is on Philly, and this spread has moved like 2 points the other way. That just has me raising an eyebrow. I don't know if it's a bet that I would be comfortable putting on my card for week 1, but if I'm playing in a pool in a contest like this, I feel like that is going to be one that not many people are going to be on in a contest.
All right, Bukes, talk to me about strategy here. Like, how sneaky and weird are you willing to get in a pick'em pool?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to get real sneaky in week 1 at least. Obviously, you want to stay in this as long as humanly possible. But I do think the Lions plus 6.5 against the Chiefs is one that you can actually take a look at and have serious consideration with. Okay. The Lions were one of the best underdog teams against the spread last year. They were 8-3 against the spread in that scenario, covering by just under 2 points. But if we remember, and this has been a kind of a theme for the past few years, the Chiefs have just not been a good team against the spread. Last year as favorites, they were 6-10-1 against the spread. And then when you look at when they were at least 6.5 point favorites or higher, only 3-7 in those scenarios. They're not blowing teams out when they're facing them. Some of these games were pretty closely contested. So when you look at a team like the Lions, who obviously have taken a real step up over the past year or so, the offense is looking good this year. I think that taking them at plus 6.5 in one of these contests, I think is a way to kind of be a little bit different.
Bukes, how about this Survivor pool too?
Yeah.
That's available. 4 pools for Survivor. We got fees ranging from $1 to $1,000.
Yep.
Huge prize pool, by the way. In the $100 prize pool, handing out $1 million in guaranteed pricing. So how do you navigate this one?
Yeah, so if you've never played a Survivor pool before, you're likely going to want to take some of those top tier teams to remain active, but you don't want to do that right off the bat too. You really want to kind of pick and choose your spots. And if you want to try to figure out which teams are going to be popular on a given week, using these betting lines is a good indication. So if we want to take that mentality, look at week 1, the Ravens are most likely going to be a very popular team going up against the Texans. They're minus 485 favorites on the money line to win that game. This is a game that the Ravens should win here. But if a upset happens, you're knocking out a huge chunk of the field. So if somehow, and I don't think this is going to happen by any means, but if the Texans were to knock off the Ravens, we're talking about a huge chunk of the field being knocked out in week 1 here. So you have to be very picky, choosy about your spots and not necessarily go to those top tier teams immediately.
All right, Jules, so do you look ahead? How far ahead do you look like down the schedule here to find out maybe when some of these big dogs are playing weaker opponents?
Yeah, you can look ahead a few weeks at a time, but if you go too far, you're gonna handcuff yourself at some point because you can't, we can't project the NFL week by week. How am I going to sit here and tell you what's going to happen in week 8 and be like, oh, I have this spot that I can take advantage of? That's not how it works. So I agree with Steve. Maybe you leave some of these better teams We're going to preview the NFC North later in the show. I'll tell you why the Ravens are absolutely not going to lose to Houston, but that doesn't matter. I want to save the Ravens for later, even though they are going to win. So for me, and this will still be a chalky team, and I've faded the Arizona Cardinals a million times since this show debuted, but Washington is a team that I don't know when I can use them again.
Sure.
But I very much trust them in this spot. So I'm going to get Washington out of the way. Going against Arizona is, there's how you win your pick'em league right there. Just go against Arizona every week. But that's a team I don't know if I can use again. So that's the type of team I want to use week 1, and we'll have Baltimore for later.
All right, this one is going to be good. The AEW pool. So there is a new one. AEW's All-Out pay-per-view is tonight in Chicago, Steve. You're a huge AEW guy. And Jules, this is free to play, so I want you to take part in this as well. Pool
I like
is
free.
all about the John Mosley and Orange Cassidy match. So tell me why you're so excited for this one.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be their main event tonight. Obviously, like you mentioned, Orange Cassidy and John Moxley going up against each other here for the international title. And, again, if you're a big fan of AEW, you can go on to DraftKings Sportsbook and just make your picks for the matchups. This is free to play. There are prize pools, cash prize pools that you can win. So if you're enjoying watching AEW, go on DraftKings Sportsbook, play the pool, and then make your picks.
All right. Jules, you're fired up for this one as well. I'm trying to pull it up here on my computer, but it's giving me issues. Anywho, some of the questions in the pool. Let's get your thoughts here. Who will attempt the first pinfall, Steve?
Yeah, so this is going to be obviously between John Moxley and Orange Cassidy. John Moxley is somebody that is extremely ferocious when he's in the ring, and somebody that just does not care about any rules or anything like that. So I think that he's going to make the first pinfall attempt here because he's going to come out aggressive going up against Orange Cassidy in this matchup. So I think John Moxley is the answer for that one to make the first pinfall attempt.
Jules, Orange Cassidy or John Moxley?
Yeah, give me the underdog.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, fine, fair, whatever. Number of times Orange Cassidy successfully hits the orange punch.
Yeah.
Over under is set at 1.5. What's the orange punch?
So that is his finishing maneuver.
Ooh.
It's basically like a punch to the jaw. Okay. So that's going to take you out.
Not like a throat punch or anything like that.
No, it's right to the jaw. Like he would knock you. Like if I'm hitting you here, it's knocking you right out there. So 1.5 is the number set for this one here. I take the over on this one. The Orange Cassidy has had to do this multiple times against some of his tougher opponents when he won the championship. Last year, he delivered 2 in that matchup to win the international championship. So give me the over 1.5 for that one.
Jules, which way are you leaning here?
Well, I have a question about it because I'm only going off of Steve's analysis here, obviously. If it's his finishing move, then how are we going over 1.5? It's one of them. It's the finishing move.
As I just analyzed, he's had to do this multiple times before in some of the tougher matchups that he's been in.
So he misses, it lands once, but it doesn't finish.
It wasn't enough. He had to do it a second time.
All right, so if it's a tough matchup, you look at
It
the
is.
over.
So you would take the over in this
All
one.
right, I get it now.
All right. Hey, this is good.
getting
This is
somewhere.
good. We're all learning together. Will the international title be used as a weapon during the match?
So not supposed to happen. There is disqualification in this, so it's not supposed to happen. So if that is being used as a weapon, then there obviously is something a little funky going on in this matchup. So referees knocked out, referees, is not conscious or something. So something a little funky would have to happen in this one. I'm going to go with the no on that. I don't think that we're going to see this used as a weapon. It has been used before, but I'm going to side with the no on this one.
Jules, what's your gut telling you right now? You think they're going to get real crazy? Yeah, you do.
I mean, I'll go against Steve. I'll say you're saying if maybe a ref is unconscious, then you do not get ejected for...
Right, because anything goes in, right? Correct.
All right, that's going to happen. It's going to be used as a weapon.
How long will this match go from the opening bell to the closing bell? Over or under 16 minutes, 30 seconds? This is free, a free-to-play pool AEW for tonight on the DraftKings Sportsbook.
Yeah, I think this one's going to go over on this one here. John Moxley, who's obviously fighting for the title, he's a challenger in this one, goes in some pretty lengthy matchups. If you see some of his recent one-on-one matchups, 14 minutes up against Rey Fenix. Tomohiro Ishii, when he faced him recently, just went over 15 minutes. So we're right in that realm. And with this being the main event, with this being the big title match for AEW, I think this one's going to go pretty lengthy. I think it's going to go over that 16.5 mark.
Jules, this could get meaty here, dude.
Okay.
What do you think? Over or under that? Come on, man.
Well, I'm just going to keep fading Steve to give other answers because if everybody tails Steve on all of these, then our pools are going to look exactly the same.
Right,
so
that's true.
I'm team fade Buchanan. Go the other way on them and win your pools.
Will there be outside interference during this match? What is outside interference? Like other dudes
I
or
need to hear
dudettes
what
coming
qualifies
in,
here.
penetrating the ring?
So anybody who is not involved in the matchup of those two men interfering and coming out and interfering in any shape or form. So John Moxley is in a group called the Blackpool Combat Club. There are other guys that could come out and potentially try to interfere in this matchup and give him a one-up. Orange Cassidy has a couple of guys that he has in his group as well. So with that being said, both of these guys have somebody that can come and back them up. I think there will be some outside interference, a little funky going on. But that could also tie in with if the title be used as a weapon, because if there's outside interference,
Yep.
these can kind of coincide with each other. It would be weird if you said yes to one and then no to the other. So you can almost have to kind of coincide with each other here. So I'm going to go yes with the outside interference. I think at least somebody's going to come and interfere in this match.
Jules, who do you think will bleed in this match?
Oh, boy.
John Moxley or Orange Cassidy? We have less than a minute to go. Could be both or neither.
I was gonna say, give me a both option.
Right.
Let there be blood. Oh God, now Steve agrees with me. Now
John-
I'm not favoring Steve.
John
not good.
Moxley for sure. He bleeds in almost every match. I would be taking both in that one.
What's Moxley's finishing move? Does he have one?
The Pargam shift.
Ah.
That's the 1.5 one as well.
Oh, that's right. What do you think? Over
I think
or under that?
if it does happen, it's an under 1.5. So I think that's going to be an under.
All right, gentlemen. I'm excited to talk some AFC North with you two coming up.
We can do it.
We're going to poke back over to the NFC side with Tommy Curran and Jeff Howe coming up. We're heading to Gillette Stadium. A full preview, every division in the conference coming up right after this break here on The Sweat, powered by Fast Twitch Energy Drink. Back here at Gillette Stadium, Jeff Howe of The Athletic, Tom E. Curran of NBC Sports Boston. We tackled the AFC already. Let's get into the NFC side of things, a conference that, once again, the Eagles are the odds-on favorite here to represent in the Super Bowl. Can you give me a reason, Tom, that they should not be?
Complacency.
Like a Super Bowl hangover kind of thing?
The reason I can't is because of the solidity and predictability of a running game and a defense. If you have those things, fewer things are cast to the winds of fortune. They can run it, they can bully you, they can rush the passer. Jeff, it should be the Eagles should be a 12-plus win team for the next 3 to 5 seasons.
I really like the Eagles. I like what Sirianni's built. I like the quarterback, Jalen Hurts. I like their whole system, their style, but they have a really tough division. And they've got a ton of talent, but there's been some roster turnover. So can you come back from a Super Bowl loss with some new pieces in that locker room, with as talented of a division as they have, and then get back to where you ultimately want to be? I mean, that's a tough course ahead. And I think, you know, the NFC is not as good as the AFC, but that's still a really good division, and there are still some good teams out there that can knock them off.
All right, so you got the Cowboys, I mean, the Giants. Those are two teams, especially two fan bases, that expect excellence year in and year out. Which one do you actually believe can deliver in that department, Tom?
The Cowboys.
Okay.
You know, I think that in a lot of ways, Brian Daboll's season last year was outstanding. He did a great job with the Giants, but I think he wrung more from Daniel Jones than is really there. I don't think Daniel Jones is... And the Giants kind of indicated that by the amount of time it took to re-up him. But I do think that the Cowboys are a team that is more solidly built, soup to nuts, and the expectations are higher. And I don't think that it was smoke and mirrors, or will be smoke and mirrors, to see them play at a higher level. Dak Prescott at some point is going to live up to the vow to not throw picks.
Okay. I mean, now he's looking over his shoulder here with Trey Lance, Jeff.
Don't get me started, although I think you just did. But no, I agree with Tom. The Cowboys are as talented as any team in the NFL. The question mark is what happens with the play calling under Mike McCarthy as opposed to Kellen Moore, and how does that transition impact them? Are there going to be some growing pains? How are they going to handle late and clutch situations? Don't sleep on the Commanders. And that's a team that I've asked around about, who am I missing? And I've heard a lot of Commanders talk. Teams are higher on Sam Howell than I think anybody else is, and that defense has the capability to be really good. I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're going to win 10 or 12 games. I don't even know if they'll get to 8, but I know they're going to be a tough team to play against, and they're much more well-respected within the league than I think in the media.
I mean, nobody's sleeping on the Lions here, because now that Aaron Rodgers is out of the NFC North, the Lions are the favorite to win the division. A sign of the apocalypse here, Tom?
Yeah, the Lions sleeps tonight. I'm sorry. Look, they are obviously offensively a scintillating team to watch. Yeah. They're a fun team because of Dan Campbell and the filtering down of his attitude to the entire team. They're embraceable. But again, I sometimes think, and I'm not saying this, Lions fans, in a derogatory way.
Okay.
But there's more swagger and chest puffing sometimes. And again, hangover that I sometimes have from historical observation. There's a Rex Ryan feel to it, where it becomes a little bit less concrete and more fungible. Is that the right word? It can just puff away if things go badly.
I was really impressed with my time in Detroit this summer. And I get why Dan Campbell is able to reach his players the way he is. This goes so far beyond that initial bite them in the kneecaps press conference. I mean, he has an ability to relate to his players. The way that they built that roster along with GM Brad Holmes is impressive. And Campbell said something that really stuck out to me. He said, I thought about the guys, my favorite teammates through my playing career, and how could I build an all 53 caliber roster of guys who would want to play with me, I'd want to play with them, and as the way he put it, would be a whole lot more talented than me too, in a self-deprecating way. But you look at that roster and the way that they've drafted the last couple of years. They've had multiple first-round picks because of the Stafford trade. The big question is, can Jared Goff continue to play mistake-free football? Because he's entering the season with 324 consecutive passes without an interception. Wow. If that continues, if he continues to keep the interceptions in the single digits, that's a team that can absolutely reach its potential, because they are really, really talented with their youth.
Is that a misread on my part then? You know, we've covered the Rex Ryan Jets, the Rex Ryan Bills, and we saw how they operated. It was just a swagger that wasn't really backed up by something. So is that a misread?
No, there is a ton of swagger there.
But is it a misread that it isn't based on something concrete?
Maybe.
Okay.
But it's hard to say because this is the first time they've come into a season with expectations like this. So you never know how a team is going to come in when they're supposed to win. I mean, you can point to half dozen teams around the league this year that are similar to that. They have swagger. They talk a lot of smack at practice. I saw them practice against the Jaguars, and every time a ball hit the ground, you could hear that secondary, all the way in downtown Detroit. So it's a team that is very confident in themselves, and you do wonder, because it's a long season, they are going to have to handle adversity. How do they go through that?
And only one proven quarterback. If you look at the NFC South, I don't know what to expect out of this division now, because Tom Brady is no longer there. It's Derek Carr in New Orleans who is the only proven quarterback. Like, what the hell happens in the NFC South this year, Tom?
I really think it's going to be the year to enjoy Bryce Young. I mean, that will be the main headline coming out of that division, in my estimation, because I think he's going to be outstanding. I love everything about his leadership, his smarts.
Right. Now making the calls there as well on the sideline.
But I think that, we're talking of the 8 divisions. That's like, who is some of the, okay.
Yeah, nobody
It's
knows.
an overlooked division that's going to send somebody to the playoffs by default.
The winner's probably going to have 9 wins, and maybe 8.
It should be one more than what, the 8 and 9 Bucks last year with Tom Brady.
I mean, the Panthers are a team that is, trying to come up on the rise. We'll see what their ceiling is. I do like Bryce Young, but he's going to have a really good rookie season in order for them to win the division.
Mm-hmm.
The Falcons are a team that's caught a lot of people's eye. Their running game, Arthur Smith is a really good coach. Has not had a chance to really show that, I think, on a grand scale because they've been devoid of talent a little bit. But I know Desmond Ridder was their top graded quarterback going into last year's draft. There is some confidence that he can help them just be a complementary piece to that talented running game.
Hey, just going back real quick to the NFC North, Jordan Love, Justin Fields, which one are you more confident has the better year this year?
I really liked what Justin Fields did last year. I think he's building a foundation for something, but man, Jordan Love has looked good this summer. And the Packers are sort of a dark horse candidate to win that division. I mean, if the Lions stumble in any way at all, I mean, Jordan Love could be the best quarterback in that division this year.
It's funny because I had 2 days when the Patriots were in a joint practice situation with the Packers. The Packers and Jordan Love were A- to straight A on one day, and the next day they got their posteriors handed to them summarily by the Patriots, and Jordan Love didn't have a good day, which is going to happen to a guy who's just ascending. So I think Justin Fields will have the better year than Jordan Love.
Hey, in the NFC West, a lot of folks look at the 49ers as the one team standing in the way of the Eagles making it to back-to-back Super Bowls. Do you agree with that?
Their talent is right there with the Eagles and Cowboys. And I don't think there's a wrong answer if you want to rank them 1 through 3. The question is, can they stay healthy for once? And that's a team that just is constantly dealing with the injury bug. If it happens at quarterback, they're in a lot more trouble this year than I think they would have been last year. I think that's pretty obvious. But Seattle is a team that is going to be really dangerous too. Right there with the Lions and Jets, Seattle has drafted extremely well.
2 more first-round picks this year, and we saw what Pete Carroll was able to do with all his young draft picks last season.
Yeah, they're crushing it. It sounds like Geno Smith is having a really good summer. So, I mean, Seattle is a team that the one thing that you got to look at with Seattle, they have a 4-game span around November where they play the 49ers twice and then the Eagles and Cowboys. So they have to be really strong getting into there, and they have to make sure that they don't face plant that month.
Yeah, I just think the Niners are so loaded. And the interesting thing to me is, look, Brock Purdy had a very significant elbow injury. He's not a big dude. We see the offensive line woes, Jeff speaking to it just before we started, across the NFL. Almost, what do you think? What would you put the over-under on for starting quarterbacks missing 3 or more games across the NFL? How many? I would bet 16 of them will miss 3 or more games. So that means when Purdy goes down, it'll be Sam Darnold in. I like Sam Darnold. I don't think he's inept.
Yeah, I mean, they liked it more than Trey Lance.
They have a great fallback plan there. I think that team, along with the Eagles, as you pointed out, are the class of it. But again, it's like we spoke about yesterday with the Chargers. It's a team that I look at sometimes and say there always seems to be some kind of barrier there.
Real quick here, Cardinals 0-17 this season.
It's not going to be that bad because they're a tough team to play against.
Okay.
I thought that they were a team that had a sneaky chance to win maybe 5 games.
I don't know,
because I
man.
think, but all the moves in roster cut week,
Yeah.
and knowing that Kyler Murray is in fact going to miss at least 4 games, that's a team that is in danger of going about 2-15.
And I would say Caleb Williams is absolutely positively a
Oh,
player
yeah.
who you would do that for. I mean, he's Andrew Luckian and Justin Fieldsian.
All right, Jeff Howe of The Athletic, Tommy Curran of NBC Sports Boston. You two are excellent. Our final NFL division preview here, folks. We've been doing it for weeks now. In the long history of this show. Yeah, like, what, 2 or 3 times in the last 9 days. Anywho, NFL season kicking off on Thursday. The AFC North, arguably the toughest division here in football. Julian Edlow, Steve Buchanan. I am Emerson Latzia. So the Bengals, gentlemen, a very popular Super Bowl pick. Baltimore has a new offensive coordinator. Maybe they could really unleash Lamar Jackson. Deshaun Watson in Cleveland has a whole offseason now to prepare. And Pittsburgh's just really never that bad. Worst they are is mediocre. Cincinnati, who likes them here to three-peat as division champs? Jules?
I think they should be favored, but, and I would pick them to do so, but given the odds, I can't necessarily go there. Plus 140 just isn't enough, given some of the other divisions. Like, I'm looking, I gave out a plus 120 on the Saints. The Niners were in, like, the minus 150 range. Those are much stronger bets, in my opinion. Cincinnati is a team that I really struggle to find a future on. You go into the player props market, you see Joe Burrow sitting at between 4,400, 4,500 yards. That's a lot to back an over on, and I'm not going to fade Joe Burrow either. This is one of those ones where I would say, if you gave me the field, I would take them not to win the division, I guess. I would lean under on the win total, 10 and 7-ish, but they're a team that I think should be really good, and I have no idea how to back them in the futures market. I won't bet them to win the conference either because the AFC is so loaded.
Okay, Steve, what do you think here, man? Is there anything of value out there in terms of betting Cincinnati?
I mean, coming into last year's offseason, at this time, Cincinnati was plus 200 to win the division, and they've shored up even more, and now we're at plus 140. So, like, it's not as appetizing as it was before. But Cincinnati made some good offseason moves as well. Like, they added Orlando Brown to their offensive line. That's going to help Joe Burrow's blind spot. He only allowed 6 sacks and 4 hits when he was with Kansas City last year. They added Irv Smith Jr. too to the tight end spot. Pretty underrated move, in my opinion. He was great a couple of years ago for the Vikings, but he's had some COVID issues, had some injury issues, really kind of put him back in the pecking order for the Vikings. But he could thrive here in Cincinnati. But their offense is just so ridiculous that it's hard to bet against them at this point. They have 3 really strong receivers. It's going to be hard to go against Cincinnati. But again, the odds really aren't as enticing when you consider how close Baltimore and Cincinnati are.
Well, Baltimore right underneath them here, Steve. Like, the success for this team comes down to a couple things: the health of Lamar Jackson, and then maybe really unlocking him, unleashing him with this new offensive coordinator in the passing game.
So that's the thing, too, about Baltimore. They can be a great team if everything falls correctly, if all the dominoes fall into place here. If I'm taking a bet here, I would probably lean under 10.5 wins, because I don't know if they're going to get to 11, but it's a tough number here because, again, a lot of things have to fall into place here. Like, they're at 10.5 wins. If you look at the lines on the DraftKings Sportsbook, because every week is available, they're favorites in 11 of the 17 games that they played. That's great. However, of those 17 games, 5 of them, the spread is at either 1 or 1.5 points. So we're talking about pretty much some coin flips here. So that's what worries me a little bit here. So yes, they're favored, but this could easily sway one way or the other. It's not like they're blowing out or they're huge favorites against a lot of these teams here. If everything is great, they say Beckham looks good, say Flowers can make a huge difference here. Obviously, the run game has been elite. But again, those two guys, if those are the two guys you're heavily leaning on, a rookie and a wide receiver who has just had a number of injuries, extremely talented, but so many injuries, that's where I get a little bit dicey here. So they're going to be close, but I think under 10.5 wins is probably the play here.
All right, Jules, does the 2019 NFL MVP come closer to his career high of 15 games started or his career low of games started of 12?
That's a pretty narrow, margin for games played. But yeah, I think Lamar Jackson is motivated, rested, and healthy, and that's a good combination of things. I think Baltimore's going to have a good season. So the time to get them, this win total when Jackson's status was up in the air was 8.5.
Yeah.
If you got over 8.5, congratulations. You can even come play it back now with some 10.5 and look for that golden middle where you win both of them. If I'm betting anything at this point on them, I will take the minus 170. I'll lay 70 cents juice for them to make the playoffs. I know we've talked about how stacked the AFC is. I'm a believer in Baltimore. I think they could either win the division or be that next team that gets in with one of the wild card spots. I think the offense is going to come together this year. They're good defensively. And again, just Lamar Jackson going back to MVP caliber is what's going to make the difference here. I like the weapons that they added as well. We got to see what they can be. But if you're looking for a player prop, I think Mark Andrews has been doing a lot of heavy lifting. Now you add an OBJ. You got Zay Flowers, a nice polished rookie speedster. Maybe look for an under on Andrews receiving yards. I still think he's going to be a red zone threat, but the yardage has to go down with all the other options that Jackson has now.
Bukes, with the Browns, how much should we be banking on Deshaun Watson now with a full season ahead of him, returning to top form here? This could be one of the better teams in the league or an all-out disaster.
I think all-out disaster is the more likely outcome here. I think for the most part, the win totals for the majority of teams in the NFL are properly set. This was one of the quickest unders for me that I saw that was available on this book. This team just has no receiver depth. After Amari Cooper, it gets real thin real fast at this point. This team is going to excel at getting to the quarterback, disrupting that, breaking up plays. They'll definitely do that. But when it comes time to start scoring, that's where I think this team is really going to struggle. Because which Deshaun Watson are you going to get this year? Are you going to get the post-suspension Deshaun Watson, or are you going to get the Deshaun Watson that was playing in Houston before everything happened? That I really don't know. He's got a great offensive line in front of him that's going to protect him and give him time to make those throws. But who is he going to be throwing to if it's not Amari Cooper? That's where I think it really gets dicey for the Browns here. I don't think this team is going to be putting up a lot of points. You know, obviously Chubb can do a lot of the workload here for him, but I just do not think this Cleveland Browns is going to make a lot of noise this year. 9.5 just feels pretty high to me.
It does, and Jules, there is that efficient rushing attack, and there's the presence of Myles Garrett, like on the defensive side of the ball. Shouldn't that at least keep the Browns in the mix all season if Deshaun Watson can at least be closer to his old form?
Yeah, I don't think they'll necessarily be awful. They'll run the ball with Chubb, who's one of the best pure running backs in the league. They have an offensive line. They're going to play some defense. That's all fine. But it just goes back to, I'll go under 9.5. I'll take the minus 135 to miss the postseason. I think this could be the fourth team in the division. It's going to be competitive, but I think this is the fourth team in the division. And we haven't seen Deshaun Watson be the superstar that he is paid to be since 2020 with a primed DeAndre Hopkins. And that's just not this team. I know he has Cooper, but like Steve alluded to, there's not much there, and he did not look good at all during his time when he came in last season. Now he's got camp to get involved and play a full season. You would expect maybe that the passing game looks a little more polished, but I think we are trying to capture something that we haven't seen in 3 years, and it's time to admit that just might be gone. That's not the player that Deshaun Watson is anymore, yet the Browns are priced to have that caliber quarterback, and it's not there.
And I'll just say real quick, too, if you are a fan of the over, then you have to hate Pittsburgh at this point, because we're not going to have all these teams. We're not going to have 3 double-digit win teams, and then you also like Pittsburgh as well. Like, there has to be losses here, especially in this division. So you would have to really hate Pittsburgh, in my opinion, to go on the over if you're also a fan of Baltimore and Cincinnati.
And Jules, you don't hate Pittsburgh this year, right? I mean, this is a team that's never really bad. Were you the one saying earlier, like, you really like the outlook of Kenny Pickett? Like, or was that
Steve's
Steve?
the Kenny?
It was one of you two. So, Steve, I mean, 0
Steve's the Kenny
losing
Pickett
seasons
guy.
here in 16 years with Mike Tomlin. So maybe Pickett could truly be special. What is that, 8.5 win total? Of course, that makes sense with this team.
Yeah, and again, like, this is the win total that I think is very properly set. Like, I don't have a lean on either direction. They'll make the playoffs at plus money. That's not too bad there, but again, really tough division. So I'm just going to go with Kenny Pickett to go over his passing prop. It's set at 3,300.5. I like him to go over that one. Had he played all 17 games last year, he was on pace to go just over 3,100. So we're not asking for a huge jump here. Playing all 17 games this year, I mean, he doesn't even have to go over 200 yards a game to hit the over on that mark. And that's something I think he will be better at because, again, I like the offense here. We got Deontay Johnson, George Pickens. What are we going to get out of Allen Robinson? Like, I feel like this is probably the most efficient team that he's been on in the past 2 or 3 years now. I mean, he was absolutely lost in Los Angeles. He got nothing done with Chicago and Justin Fields. This is probably the best quarterback play that he's had now in 2 years. And if he's the third option in this this lineup or in this offense overall, like I think that is a role that he can actually excel in. So with that in mind, I think this is going to be a number that Kenny Pickett is going to go over. Again, I think everything is set really well that I don't have a strong lean either way. So I'm just taking the prop in this one here and going over Pickett and his passing yards.
Jules, pretty tough to see these guys catapulting themselves like high up in this division.
It's tough, but they have the potential to. I'm not going to pick them to win the division, but that said, and everybody's going to throw the Mike Tomlin, never had a losing season in your face, I'll play over 8.5. I think that the Steelers will have a winning record this season. When TJ Watt is in the lineup, they are a much better team, and I think if defense anchors them, that makes things that much more easy on Pickett in the offense.
Okay, cool. Real quickly, Bengals, good Super Bowl bet here.
At 11-1, it's hard to ignore them at 11-1.
Okay.
I mean, you're getting really strong. I mean, either one of these guys are really strong, I think, in my opinion.
I'll take longer odds on Baltimore instead.
Sure.
Love it. All right, guys, final break of the show coming up. Final block of the show following said final break of the show. We're going to be working up a sweat. How about Cardinals going 0-17? Love it. Welcome back to The Sweat, everybody, powered by Fast Twitch Energy Drink. And there is no better time than now to suck down some Fast Twitch Energy Drink because we're about to punch it up, Cody. Work up a sweat. Which bets are we going to be sweating here throughout the NFL season? We'll start with the division we just discussed here on The Sweat, powered by Fast Twitch Energy Drink. The AFC North. So what do we think here? Division standings bet. You can go to the division specials tab on the DraftKings Sportsbook, Jules. How soon until we start sweating this thing?
I think this one will be one that drags out. And in the later weeks of the season, 17, 18, we're still going to be waiting for some clarity here. So I think that there's a lot of divisional matchups early. You have the Bengals, who are the favorites, going against Cleveland, going against Baltimore early. That's going to get us, if teams start knocking each other off, that's going to keep this kind of a mess until the season goes on. So I do think that the NFC North standings, regardless of which way you want to bet it, will probably wind up being a sweat towards season's end.
What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, the Bengals have such a opportunity to get out to such a quick start. Like Browns in week 1, Ravens, obviously tough matchup in week 2. Then it's Rams.
Well, that's also an opportunity to have to work from behind within the division.
But then Rams, Titans, Cardinals right after that in the next 3 weeks. So that's going to be an opportunity where even if the Bengals do lose that game against the Ravens, they can definitely try to make up some ground because 3 easy wins, it looks like, in weeks 3 through 5. So I think regardless of who wins that game in week 2, obviously if it is the Bengals, they could really start to take an early lead there. But yeah, those early matchups for the Bengals, there's a lot of very easy winnable games there.
The team here in our Boston backyard, the Patriots, win total set at 6.5. Okay, all right. So you're thinking we're sweating this thing out through most of the season as well?
No way.
They don't come close to this?
I don't think they're coming close to this. They have one of the toughest schedules in the league. When they face the Commanders in week 9, this team could easily be 1-7 at this point. The only win coming against the Raiders during that stretch there. The defense is going to be
which I believe they're 1-point underdogs in. The Patriots are 1-point underdogs.
Well, that's
in Vegas.
the Jimmy G revenge game.
Yeah, we'll see if he's even healthy. We'll see if he's even healthy for that. Yeah. The defense is going to be great on the Patriots. That is something that you cannot knock. But truly, I think this team is going to struggle, and their schedule to start off the year is absolutely brutal.
Oh, my God.
So,
Eagles, Dolphins, Jets, Cowboys, Saints, there's the Raiders, the Bills, the Dolphins, and then the Commanders.
Where are the wins coming from?
I see 0.
I'm not, it really could be. And now that Julian informed me that they're underdogs against the Raiders.
There we go.
I would play the Patriots. If that line stands and everybody's healthy, I would look to the Patriots in a pick'em type of game in Vegas after the way last year ended. But yes, Steve is correct. November 5th. If I'm going through the Patriots schedule and I say, what game should they absolutely win? I see one, and it's November 5th, hosting the Commanders. And I kind of like Sam Howell and the Commanders this year. So we'll see. Yes, so the Colts, that's an international game, though. Kind of weird. They should win that. So,
is that Germany?
Yeah, let's give them 2. The thing is, it's so low at 6.5. The Patriots they're favored in 3 games. They're going to knock off some of these. They count as an underdog against the Raiders. I like them in that game. So if they're favored in 3 and they win that, let's give them an underdog win against the Raiders. That's 4. Coming down the stretch, they're going to knock off a couple teams. I think that at 6.5, it's so low. This is going to be a sweat, but it's appropriately priced, being bet down from 7.5 to 6.5, which is a rarity to say about the Patriots.
What are we thinking about sweating Tua's passing yards total this season, Jules? 38.50.5 right now. And we know how much that his progress this season is on his health.
Yep.
Yeah, so you're sweating Tua's health here. You want to see him stay on the field. He's never gone over this number in his career. He's never played more than 13 games in his career. So if Tua stays healthy, you play in the 17 games, there's no reason he shouldn't get there. If he gets injured like he has every year of his career and even dating back to college, then it should be an under. Same as the Jimmy Garoppolo one that you saw beneath him that we talked about earlier in the show. So you're banking on health here. But if he stays healthy and you're throwing it up to Waddle and Hill, you're going over.
Yeah, Bukes, even money right now on over, under, -120.
I mean, this is a pass for me just because there's too much that you have to worry about
For sure.
with Tua. Because obviously the amount of concussions he's had, like he's in danger of potentially never playing again if he suffers another
Absolutely.
one. I mean, obviously we hope that doesn't happen, but then you consider the weapons that he has on this team. We talked about it a little bit the other day. Like he had 2 receivers in Waddle and Hill that both had over 1,400 receiving yards last year. Then you put A-Chain into the mix. How soon is he going to be an impact player? But he can catch out of the backfield. He's extremely fast. So if he gets downfield, if he ends up being like one of those Austin Eckler type guys, like that's just another weapon that he can dump it to early and that can gain some yards after that. So there are ways for him to get over this number, but the health is the biggest thing for me. So I think this is going to be a pass for me. But again, if everything stays healthy and he looks good, nobody is more capable of going over that number with the weapons that he's surrounded with.
I mean, it's also someone who impacts the totals of all of those other ridiculous weapons.
Of course, yeah, of course.
That you have already mentioned. How about this? Cardinals 0-17. How long are we going to be sweating this one?
Oh, the first sweat is going to be in week 6. The second sweat is going to be against week 12. That's because they're playing the Rams. That's really the only team that you are concerned about that they would not be able to beat. But with the way that they're tanking, and it's so obvious and it's so such a real thing by the cuts that they've made in this offseason, Kyler Murray, they don't even look like they're interested in playing him. I think it's a real chance that this team could potentially go that. Now, it's hard to go 0-17. Right, like you can try to control this as much as you can, but we've seen this before where teams are, trying to tank and they still end up, stealing a win even if they're not trying to. So the Rams are the real threat for the Cardinals to gain that first win of the year. But you look at the rest of the schedule, like it's tough. It's a real tough stretch for this team to sneak out a win.
First-year coach Jonathan Gannon is going to have a tough time fielding a competitive team. Jules, believe they're underdogs in all 17 games?
Of course they are.
Absolutely.
Come on.
Yeah, I mean, Steve nailed it. The 2 spots that we have to worry about are the Rams in the division because I think the Rams could just as easily wind up tanking. Cooper Kupp's already hurt. If Stafford, who's dinged up, goes down early, you got a QB in LA, in Southern California, Caleb Williams, that I'm sure the Rams would very much like to succeed. Matt Stafford, I think it's a Rams versus Cardinals tankathon.
This is like the Jags and Jets trying to hit Trevor Lawrence, and the Jets are like, oh, damn, we won a game. And Jags are like, yeah.
Yeah, so let's give them a split there. It's hard to go 0-17. I think they will split that. They also have a game at Houston. But, I mean, Houston's already got their quarterback in Stroud. They got their defensive anchor in Will Anderson. I think a 1-16 team with a win over the Rams is, like, perfectly in play.
Yeah, that's a wet fart right there, man. Week 1 sweat, Thursday night this week, Lions and the Chiefs. Hey, if you're going to be at this game, folks, find DraftKings in the parking lot of Arrowhead Stadium. Golic and Gojo going to be, what?
Cool.
Pretty excited
Hanging
for
out
it?
in the parking
yeah,
lot.
No, it's going to be 3
I won't
hours.
be in the parking lot.
Give me 3 hours of pregame coverage.
Samir will be, right?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. So, anywho, how do you think we will be sweating Jahmyr Gibbs' rushing total here? 37.5. Like, this dude is supposed to be the workhorse.
Yeah, so we got some interesting comments from their offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, yesterday, saying that they're going to involve Gibbs in ways we don't expect.
Okay, well,
I don't know what that
it.
means. So if we're going to be doing it in ways we don't expect, that doesn't sound like a running back to me. Maybe they're lining him up as a receiver possibly.
Okay.
But, obviously David Montgomery is in the mix. He's going to cut into those carries. That was one of the offseason acquisitions that they made. So Montgomery's going to be in the mix here. So it's a pretty low total. But again, like what game script are we thinking of here? Obviously going up against the Chiefs, they're 6.5-point underdogs there. I like the Lions to cover, but I'm not sure what the plan is here for Gibbs. And that comment just kind of threw a wrench into everything because if that's the way they're going to be using him, we don't know what that means.
Okay.
It sounds like maybe he's going to be used more as a receiver potentially. It's a little too murky for me.
All right, so you hear those comments, Jules. Proceeding with caution then if you're going to be targeting this rushing total for Gibbs?
Absolutely. I'm not playing the rushing total. I think it could be a sweat. You're talking about a road dog with a rookie in week 1. But Gibbs should be involved in the receiving game. Steve mentioned it. So I just pivot to the receiving total. The receiving total is 26.5. I think you can go over that sweat-free. Dude's got speed. He can break one. He can get there on 2 receptions, I think, and I think he's going to be in line for a lot more than a couple targets in this game. So I actually like Gibbs over 26.5 receiving yards as my favorite player prop in this game.
All right, how about just best bet for Thursday night right now, Jules? What do you got?
It's my week 1 best bet. I'm going to use the Chiefs as a teaser leg. We get them down to a pick. Steve mentioned Lions good as dogs. Chiefs not great at covering as huge favorites, but they always win those games. And then Washington to stomp all over the Cardinals and just win that game in week 1. That's my 6-point teaser. Give me Washington and Kansas City to win.
Anything early catch your eye right now?
No, I like the Lions to cover. I talked about it earlier. 6.5-point underdogs there. 8-3 as an underdog last year. I think they cover in this one. The Chiefs struggle to cover as favorites.
All right, should be fun. NFL season kicking off Thursday night in Kansas City. Again, find DraftKings in the parking lot there of Arrowhead Stadium. Lots of gas, lots of fun times.
Doesn't sound
Dude,
right.
Jules, come on,
Say
man.
it a different way. DraftKings is going to be there. Come find us at opening night of the NFL, not come hang out in the parking lot.
Well, that's what you're going to be doing with us.
That'll
That's
do
the
it.
show, folks. We'll see you next weekend.